Wheelies. It was Christmas morning in 1967, and like every 10-year-old in America that year, I was hoping that my race to the bottom of the stairs to see what had been left by the Jolly One would be greeted by the sight of a new Stingray bike. Bicycles were pretty common up until then and pretty boring, something which might have been ridden by some old English guy in the English countryside. But this Stingray bike was something very different and quite extraordinary. A short bike with a long banana seat and tall ape-hanger handlebars. If that were not enough, they came in wild metallic colors, with sparkled seats, bright chrome fenders, and a fat rear tire. So I got mine, as did my younger brother Tim, and although a slightly tamer version than the nice Schwinn's that the McDougal brothers had just gotten across the street, we were excited and went out in our winter coats for a ride down Westgate Road before the clock had struck 7 a.m. It would be hard for me to explain what a bike meant to a young lad in those days. Quite simply, it meant everything. Growing up, a carefree sense of freedom, and the ability to experience a wider world far from the neighborhood. Mostly, we just rode them everywhere, every day, jumping curbs, racing downhill with our hair flying back over our heads. We made believe we were Dennis Hopper and Easy Rider, or Mario Andretti, or even Roger Petty. In those days, a kid with a bike and a baseball glove had a full life. It did not take long before we started fooling with them and customizing them, buying all kinds of gizmos, and making our bike a little different and a little better than the other guys. I don't ever recall coveting the bike of any other kid. I wanted my bike because it was all me, and I used to take it apart and put it back together, and even painted it once, changing the gumball green to a metallic blue. Who cared if I didn't know how to paint anything when I started? I figured it out. After adding a long chrome sissy bar to the back of the seat, just like everyone else, adding a purple pad to the top, that bike was hot. And when I wasn't whipping up and down the block on it, I was just looking at it, or heading over to Sunrise Schwinn to see what kind of stuff I could buy to add to it the next time I got $1 or $2. Then something really cool happened when we got to see our first wheelie. I don't know where it started, but soon we were all learning to pull up on our handlebars and ride on the back wheel alone, balancing ourselves like we were on a unicycle down the street, trying over and over to go just a little further. We measured our success by telephone poles, how many poles you could stay up on the back wheel. The length between poles was maybe 150 feet, the width of 2 of the lots we grew up on in suburbia. In the beginning, you were pretty good to stay up for a quarter pole. I was pretty good and never made one entire length between the telephone poles in our block. Johnny Slavensky's big brother Stosh was the best. He could go 2 or sometimes 3 poles, and before long there were guys who could go halfway around the block, turns and all. Tony Masseri, the older guy with the Triumph who lived next door, even tried to do it on his motorcycle, and we could not believe it until he flipped backwards and banged himself up on the bike too. We all thought that was really dumb, trying to do a wheelie on a motorcycle, and then we immediately got on our bikes and went back to it. We were forever having little contests with one another, the guys on the block, trying to outdo what the other guy just did, and we never got bored with it. You never knew when you would pop one and be going as far as Stosh Slavensky. But my wheelie days, like all my other kid days, were numbered. I used to make about $7 a week delivering newsdays to about 35 houses on the block. But around that time, I signed on, at age 12, to be a Little League umpire. It was intoxicating, being the guy with the big blue chest protector, calling the balls and strikes and yelling, "You're out," when it was called for. And the pay was great. I got $1.75 to call a 6-inning game, and I loved being on a ball field so much, I would have likely done it for nothing. One Tuesday night I was sent to ump a game behind the old A&P on Carmen's Road, and I ate my dinner early and headed over for the 6 o'clock game by 5:30. I killed the time by doing what I loved in the big paved area by the field, doing wheelies. Within a few minutes, I was approached by two kids on foot who I did not know, who stood and marveled at my abilities for a few minutes, and then asked if they might propose a little contest. I could not resist. So I rode one and then handed over the bike to each of them, and they each rode one, pathetically I might add. And then I rode another, and back and forth we went for 10 minutes or so, until one of the kids asked if they might use my bike to run around to the front of the A&P store to pick up the bike they were both riding, which had been locked up in front. Of course, I agreed, and they both jumped onto my purple banana seat, one behind the other, and rode off. When I saw them turn the corner, I knew that I had done perhaps the dumbest thing I had ever done, and it was the very last look I ever had at that bike. I don't think I even knew what to do but to run after them. It was way too late, and I walked back home that evening wondering how I would explain to my father that I might actually be as dumb as he thought I was. I don't even remember what he said. Just as well. Soon after, I got some money for graduating from junior high school, something which does not even exist anymore. I used it to buy a new bike, a metallic green one with a tiny seat, handbrakes, big wheels, and 10 speeds which could not only go like the wind, but take you across the whole planet if you wanted. I read about people who did that on 10 speeds. But not even Stash Slavensky could do a wheelie on it. That one got stolen too, but at least not because I let it happen. But that's a whole other story. Even now, in my 50s, sometimes in a dream, I can still get on a bike and do a wheelie. In that dream, I always manage to lap the whole block, right past the Slavensky house, and then, man, I just keep on going.